Hi, this is Debbie from Lime Doodle Design, and today for Sam's Stamp I'm going to be using a spring plush die to create some autumn and winter felt cute critters. The main die in the plush big ear bunny die set cuts out a nice simplified critter body, which means that by switching out felt colours and accessories you can create a number of critters from the one die set. Before I move on to the sewing, I thought I'd show you how I die cut felt. I use the Big Shot machine and I place inside it an extra metal shim, and that will increase pressure when you run it through the die cutting machine, which will mean that the felt will cut cleanly. Now, I use a metal shim, but if you don't have a metal shim, then a couple of pieces of extra card will also increase the pressure and give you that nice clean cut. The plush dies cut both the outline and also the stitching holes you're going to need, and sometimes I find that the felt gets stuck either within the die or within the felt, and so having a pokey tool or a needle handy to push the felt out where it's got stuck is very useful. You're left with a perfectly die cut shape ready for stitching, and I ran the die through my die cutting machine with lots of different colours of felt to create packs of shapes that would be ready to be stitched up into different critters. These packs would be great for sewing on the go. All you'd need would be the needle and thread, and you could sew these up wherever you had a few minutes spare. I'm going to start off by showing you the shapes I cut in order to make up the big-eared bunny that the die was originally intended for. I've cut the body twice from some light brown felt, and then I've used the big ear die to cut two more light brown ears, and I also die cut those from some peach felt as well. And with those I then trimmed off the holes, if that makes sense, so that I was left with a bunny ear shape but slightly smaller than the original. I'll then be able to sew the light peach inner ear to the outer ear to create some nice detail. I've also got a bunny tail and a scarf, some googly eyes, and also I've die cut the nose shape, which is included in the die set, from some more of the light peach felt. Moving on to the snowman, which is really easy to construct, I've cut two bodies from some white felt, a little carrot nose from some yellow felt. I've got a couple of googly eyes, and I also cut a few bunny tails which I did think could make some snowballs. Next up is the penguin. I cut two black bodies and also a white body, and again trimmed the holes away so that I was left with the white tummy area. I used the big ear bunny die, the actual ear die, to cut two black wings, and then I used the heart die to cut some yellow feet. If you turn the heart upside down, they become little yellow penguin feet, and again I just snipped a simple yellow beak out of some yellow felt as well, and then a couple of googly eyes and a nice winter scarf too. Next up is the spider pack, and this is again very simple to construct. I cut two black bodies and then cut a pipe cleaner, a fuzzy pipe cleaner, into four pieces to make the legs, and I plan on sewing those onto the tummy of the spider, bending them, and then you'll even be able to have the spider standing up on its pipe cleaner legs. And then just to finish, I've got a couple of big googly eyes. For some reason I thought the spider deserved big googly eyes, and I think I might add some seed beads to the body of the spider for decoration. Lastly, but certainly not least, is a cute little owl. I've cut two bodies from the same beige felt that I did for the bunny. I've cut two dark brown wings, which were from the bunny ear die, and again two heart feet, and I also cut two brown hearts, and I'm going to tuck those into the top of the owl to be owl ears. A snip of triangle of yellow felt for the beak, and again two nice big googly eyes. I'm not going to show you all the sewing of the critters because that would take too long for a video, but I'm going to show you a few of the stages on a few of the different critters and also give you some hints and tips that I found helpful along the way. Believe me, I'm no seamstress, as perhaps you'll see in places as I'm sewing these up, but I really do enjoy sewing. I find it very relaxing, and if I can do these, then I truly believe that really anybody can. I'm going to start with snowman, as that's a really nice simple shape to demonstrate. I've taken the two white snowman bodies and I've threaded a needle with some white embroidery thread. I like to fix the embroidery thread onto the inside of the critters where they won't be seen and give a nice secure start to the sewing. So I go backwards and forwards on one of the back pieces on the inside, and that will be hidden once the snowman is sewn up. Once the thread is attached on the inside, I then poke the needle back through one of the holes so that the thread is on the outside and you're ready to start sewing. Place the front and the back of the snowman together and then use a simple straight stitch to go around the edge of the snowman. I picked this up from Jennifer Maguire when she started showing some of her felty stitching, and that is that by doing a simple straight stitch around the edge once and then going back around and filling in the gaps, you get a nice finish on both the front and the back of the piece. You could go round with a back stitch, but then that's not always as attractive from the reverse. So by going round in a simple straight stitch and then going round again to fill in the gaps, you get a really nice finish on both sides. I decided to add a hanging loop to the snowman, and so when I got to the top of the snowman's head, I tucked in a piece of rickrack ribbon which toned nicely with the felt I was intending using for the scarf. And then as you continue to stitch around, the loop will be attached securely to the top of the snowman. I continued straight stitching around the snowman body until I'd covered about 3/4 of the way round, and then while I've still got a little gap, I'm going to use a pokey tool. In this case I'm using a stylus. I think it's good to have something which isn't sharp on the end so that you don't poke your way all the way through the felt, and I'm using the stylus to just tuck some toy stuffing into the snowman and using the stylus to push it right up into the head area, and then I'll also add some to the body area. I don't personally like my felties too stuffed. I like them to have some softness, so I don't like to add too much stuffing, and that also, I must admit, it does make it easier to sew up afterwards if you haven't got it overstuffed. Once you've finished tucking the toy stuffing inside, then you continue finishing off the straight stitching, and once you've got to the point that you started, then you can go back through and fill in the stitches, fill in the gaps between the stitches, to give that continuous row of stitching, which I think gives a nice finished result. I think all of these critters look great with a nice winter scarf, and all I've done for that is cut a thin strip of felt, tied it in a knot around the neck, and then cut a fringe into the end of the scarf. Now, to make it sit still, it's best to secure it with a stitch so the top of the scarf lays down nicely, otherwise you end up with it flying a bit loose. For the rest of the snowman pieces, I'm going to attach those with some Ranger Multi-Medium and Matte. I find this glue works fine, however if you've got a fabric glue that you like, then that would equally work well. From the original die set, I did cut some bunny tails from white felt with the intention of using them for snowballs. However, I didn't feel that this snowman really needed it, so I've decided to leave those off for now. I'm going to move on to making up the spider, and I've got the two black bodies and I'm going to stitch that up in exactly the same way as the snowman. For the spider I'm not going to add a hanging tag. I just thought he could either have a loop of twine threaded from his back to hang him from the ceiling, or equally just be placed on a tabletop for your Halloween decorations. Once I'm stitching up the body of the spider, I then push the needle through to the tummy of the spider, and I use the same black embroidery thread to attach the pipe cleaners to the tummy. Again, I used Ranger Multi-Medium and Matte to add the eyes, and then picked out some purple seed beads from the Shaker selection from Sam Says Stamp to add some embellishment to the spider's body. For the penguin, I stitched the white tummy to the front of the body and then lined up the back piece and tucked in the wings. Now the wings are die cut with the ear die of the bunny, so once I got those lined in, then when I stitched around with the black embroidery thread, the wings were captured between the two layers. I do find it wonderful that by changing up a few felt colours and the use of the die, so hearts become feet and ears become wings, small changes, and you can create such a wonderful array of critters from the one die set. From a Halloween spider, an autumn owl, through to the winter with an ornament snowman and a penguin and a bunny, these are just a few of the examples that I think you can make with this die set. You could use the body of the die again to cut the body of a reindeer, and you could have pipe cleaner antlers or some freehand felt antlers. Equally, if you turn the die upside down, you could have the face of a reindeer, and you could use the bunny tail to cut a red Rudolph nose. If you cut the bunny from grey felt and gave it a squiggly tail, you could have a winter mouse, give it a scarf, maybe a hat, and you'd have a Christmas mouse. You could cut the body of a turkey and then use the big ear die to create a fan of tail feathers. The possibilities really are endless, and I hope you take a second look at your dies to make the most of them throughout the whole of the year. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.